Good evening and welcome to the latest edition of the Ross Raider Wrap-Up, your one-stop shop for all things Richmond Raider sports. I'm your host, Matt Harrelson, and of course alongside with me for the ride, Dion Cranford. Now, have a good week. It seems like we've got more rain in the forecast, unfortunately.
It does, but it's actually been a couple of really good weeks for the sports. Not a whole lot of delays caused by the weather, and there's actually been some really good games, especially in baseball, softball, soccer. We'll kind of dive into a little bit of each of those and a little bit more.
Absolutely. Yeah, and let's dive right in. And let's start with the Lady Raiders on the diamond, who are undefeated and, in my opinion, probably at least the best team in the state, but just in a general sense, are they one of the best teams in the country?
Well, I mean, it would be hard to argue that. At least statistically they are. I mean, last week they had 14 home runs in 3 days. They're currently the nation's leader in average home runs per game, according to Max Prep. So, that's an exciting statistic right there to get excited about. But I think definitely they're probably the favorite in the state right now in 4A. So.
Absolutely. Now, according to Max Preps, where are they ranked in the state?
I'm not sure because it usually takes them a while to kind of position them all based on competition and things. So I'm not quite sure yet.
You are correct. And last year's champion, Jack Britt, they actually have already defeated them this week. But where are we starting? Because you just talked about the 14 home runs, recorded 13 RBIs in 3 days last week. So let's talk about some of these young ladies.
All right, well, I mean, just to kind of run down those home runs, you had Taylor Parrish with 2, Peyton Chappell with 1, and Savannah Lampley with 1 on Tuesday night against Pinecrest. That was in the first game there. Kayla Hawkins, Taylor Parrish, Paige Ransom, Aaliyah Sweeney, and Grayson Way against Uwharrie Charter. So, I mean, not only did they have 5 home runs in that game, but it was 5 different players and included all 4 grade levels, a freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior. So
awesome.
So kind of had the whole thing wrapped up there. And then Kayla Hawkins, Taylor Parrish, Paige Ransom, and Grayson Way hit 2 against Pinecrest on Thursday night. So it was 2 wins against Pinecrest, and then Uwharrie Charter. They stepped outside the conference for that one on Wednesday.
So I've got here in your notes that it took only 16 innings to earn all 3 victories. Now, if you're an opposing pitcher, how do you navigate through this lineup, or can you even do that?
I don't know. I mean, I remember about 2 or 3 years ago, we were talking about how dangerous the softball team was from 1 to 9. I mean, you couldn't really.
We're losing stuff over here.
Uh-oh.
Sorry, go ahead.
Well, it was just Clemson. So.
Yeah.
No, but how dangerous they were from 1 to 9 position, because I remember there was a game in the playoffs against Providence, I think about 2 or 3 years ago, where our number 9 batter, who was a 9th grader at the time, came up and hit a home run to win that game in the playoffs. So, I mean, there's just nobody, and it's just stayed consistently that well in terms of their lineup for the past 3 or 4 years, and that's how they've really kind of run things.
They are definitely clicking on all cylinders, especially with the deep ball. They now have 17 home runs on the season, which you mentioned, and are currently the nation's leader in average home runs per game. And I saw that number. It was like, 2.8, 3.
Yeah, something like that. Right about 3 home runs a game.
Yeah, which is just, when you really think about it, is phenomenal. I mean, number one, you can't beat it, obviously.
Well, when you do 14 in 3 days, it's going to really beef up that average number a little bit. But, yeah, I mean, like you just said, if you are the opposing pitcher, I mean, about the best thing you can hope for is that they're going to hit it and play because you're not going to get too many strikeouts on this team.
And as Tom Glavine and Greg Maddux said in a Nike commercial probably 25 years ago, chicks dig the long ball. And I would imagine that guys dig the long ball as well. And the Lady Raiders are doing their part in that. So let's talk about Grayson Way here for just a moment. The daughter of Mike Way, who coaches the Lady Raiders tennis team, also coaches the swimming team. So there is some athleticism in that family. But in those 3 games combined, she only gave up 3 runs on 7 hits. She struck out 22 batters and did not issue a single walk. And she's now gone 24 straight innings without issuing a walk. So we're talking a lot about home runs here, but what about the pitching staff?
Oh, well, I mean, she is the pitching staff.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's really all you've really got to look at. Now, I believe she gave up a few runs in the Jack Britt game because this, of course, that statistic was before they played Jack Britt on Tuesday. But still, I mean, again, when you've got that dominance at the plate and then you've turned around and got that dominance in the circle, I mean, all you can hope to do is just keep up with them, but you're never really going to beat them in any aspect of the game.
And as you mentioned, they did give up 7 runs to Jack Britt. We're going to talk about that here in just a moment. But it makes it a lot easier as a pitcher to go out there when you have a big league, right?
Oh, yeah. And, I mean, it also helps you kind of kind of refocus in those intense situations. Like you mentioned, we were going to talk about that in a minute, but Richmond actually scored, I believe, 6 runs in the bottom of the 6th inning of that game. To give themselves some distance, and then Jack Britt turned around and scored 5 in the top of the 7th, had more runners on, and were really threatening to catch back up. But, if you're in that position where you've already got that big lead and you give up some runs, it does take a little bit of that pressure off, and maybe it allowed her to kind of get back into it and retire get those last few outs.
I agree 100%. And speaking of big leads, Richmond won against Pinecrest in that first game 12-1 in 6 innings. Then they defeated Uwharrie Charter Academy 13-2, also in 5 innings. Then turned around and beat Pinecrest again 11-0, also in 5 innings. So before we delve into this Jack Britt game, again, how important is it to not only get these victories, but get them in very quick fashion?
Well, very important, because if you think about it, we were just talking about that Jack Britt game. They gave up 5 runs in the 7th inning. That's the first 7th inning they've had in a while. So, it's going to affect Grayson a little bit as she gets into those tougher games where she's really having to pitch 7 innings, and she's getting a lot of help from the plate. From herself, even, because she's a great batter herself, and is I think currently holds the school's home run record right now. So, but with all these young girls kind of coming up and hitting it out of the park as well, she's got to run for her money. But
she is donating to her own cause.
She is very much doing very well.
So let's talk about the Jack Britt game now. Jack Britt coming in as the reigning 4A champion here in North Carolina, and Richmond said, "Anything you can do, we can do better," and defeated them 10-7. So, what were your takeaways from that ball game?
Well, once again, the Lady Raiders defeated Jack Britt 3 times last year, although Jack Britt went on to win the state title. And a matter of fact, Jack Britt had to play South Caldwell, who was the team that knocked Richmond off in the regional finals, is what I was looking for. So, there is, for some of these returning players, there is some salt in that wound a little bit, and this kind of shows that they can hold their own against one of the state's best teams. The Lady Raiders, as I mentioned before, they scored 6 runs in the bottom of the 6th inning before Jack Britt scored the 5 in the top of their 7th. So you got to think that game was actually pretty close, and had they not had that big run in the 6th, that game could have went a different way. So,
but, and I don't want to interrupt you, but talk a minute about how important it is to be able to win the blowout games and be able to win some of these closer games.
Well,
it's not as easy as it sounds.
It's not, because the problem is, like we talked about those games last week where they just blew out the opponents. That doesn't really help you all that much. Yeah. We got all these fun statistics to look at, and it kind of helps your record, and it does kind of get some maybe some girls out of the dugout and into the game that wouldn't normally get that much playing time. But again, your starters aren't really it's like the weight room. You're not going to get stronger unless you apply that pressure and keep adding. So these games, despite the fact that it was much closer, these games are much more beneficial to the Lady Raiders in the long run, and they're going to use wins like this to kind of carry them through the season and into the playoffs. So, to be honest, we need more games like this.
Yeah.
At least more challenges like this, and fewer of the maybe the easier, lighter teams on the schedule. So it's good to see this.
And it also gives you both kinds of wins. Also gives you momentum, and it also gives you a boost confidence-wise too. So nothing wrong with that. Now, with that being said, let's take a quick look at the conference standings. Now, these aren't up to date, though, are they? I see that Richmond's undefeated still. We know that, and they are, 7-0 overall, 5-0 in the SAC. Yeah. Jack Britt right behind them, although now they have a loss.
Yes, so Richmond. I apologize for not up there.
No
Richmond's 7-0 and 5-0 now.
I just don't want to say the wrong stats here, so I'll let you take over.
Well, Jack Britt's 3-1 overall as well in conference play. They've only played conference games, so they're 3-1 and 3-1 right now.
Is that an anomaly, or is that because of weather and being a quick preseason?
Probably a little bit. Yeah, I imagine they had some early ones get canceled because of all that weather.
Gotcha.
Hoke is 6-1 and 4-1 now. So, excuse me, theirs is actually 6-1 and 4-1. Got to get these scores right. Pinecrest is now 3-4, 2-3, and Lumberton is now 2-4, 1-3. So going down the list, but I think Scotland is still currently winless, and 71st only has 1 win on the season.
So looking at the standings, was Pinecrest supposed to be a team that was going to give us a run for the money? Are they having a down year, or were they not expected to do much this season?
Not really. Pinecrest really hasn't been they kind of go up and down in softball. They've really never been as big of a softball program as they have been a baseball program.
Okay.
So I'm not really too surprised about those.
All right. Well, looking at the other teams here, if anybody's going to give Richmond a run for their money on the diamond for the Lady Raiders, who's that going to be? The Lady Bucks, perhaps?
Well, yeah, despite the records, I still think the second game against Jack Britt and the 2 against Lumberton are the 3 games that Richmond needs to get by. In all honesty, if they win those 3, they're not going to lose a conference game. I mean, I'll call that right now.
Yeah.
It's just not going to happen.
And we were talking before we started filming that the only teams they have left are conference games, right? Or do you know if they have any other non-conference ones moving forward?
They do, and we talked about this a couple of weeks ago. Because of where Easter falls,
That's right.
all of the games fall before Easter, so they do have a holiday tournament at West Brunswick to end the season, and they've got some good competition there. So that'll be a good finale to kind of lead them into the playoffs.
Very good. All right, let's move towards the boys' side. Let's talk about Raider baseball. They also defeated Pinecrest 6-1. That was obviously a big victory. Jake Ransom continuing his dominance, hit his second grand slam of the season. So let's start right there.
Yeah, I mean, it was funny to just in back-to-back weeks like that to have the opportunity to come up and have the bases loaded just for right out. But it was funny when he walked up to the plate. It was like every Raider fan in the stand knew that he was getting ready to knock it out of the park.
Coming.
And he just smashed it. Now I won't lie, it wasn't as good of a hit as the one he did against Purnell Sweat because, like I said, I think that one's in orbit somewhere. But
Was this more of a line drive?
yeah,
Home
it got out of the park. It did enough, but but it was a huge hit, and it was a great night, and they pulled away there in the 6th inning It was a good close game until that 6th inning.
Yeah, and I was going to say, thank goodness for that home run because that was actually only the second hit for the Raiders in the game. So
yeah, score 6 runs but only have 2 hits in the game. That's just how it went. Yeah.
Now talking about pitching, Hunter Paris, he earned his 3rd victory on the mound, gave up 1 run on 5 hits, struck out 4 batters, and we talked so many times about how someone or someones were going to have to step up on the mound, and we're seeing that, aren't we?
Yeah, and I mean, as you mentioned, or as you talked about in your interview with Ricky Young, they're trying to pitch by committee a little bit.
Yep.
Hunter Paris seems to be their number 1 guy right now.
Okay.
Obviously, I mean, he's out of their 5 victories now. He's been on the mound for 4 of them.
He's the man, huh?
So he's kind of the guy. And then the second set seems to be going in Cameron Caraway's favor right now. Now, unfortunately, he hasn't been as successful, so they're kind of rotating more than one pitcher into that second game, and I'm kind of interested to see what they put out against Jack Britt on Friday because Jack Britt is a good team, and they're a good, strong batting team, and they're going to need a good pitching performance. And we were a couple of us were up in the press box talking last night. We were actually kind of impressed with Nige Stroman. We mentioned him all through basketball season,
Absolutely.
and now
that surprised me a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, 6'4", 6'5". I mean, he's tall, and he's
which is
really
beneficial for a pitcher.
and he's a lefty.
Even
so
better.
He gets up on that mound, and it was so funny. He came in the 7th inning of that loss to Pinecrest and struck out 3 straight batters in the 7th inning, and I mean, just did it with ease. So I would love to see them kind of mold him into a
Absolutely. And I want to say, I haven't seen him pitch. I would imagine he has, what they call raw talent on the mound. But if you're 6'4", 6'5", and a left-hander, if he tries to work and hone his craft, he could have a career as a pitcher moving forward, couldn't he?
Yeah, I mean, because his pitches look like they come straight down.
Yeah.
So, I mean, from the batter's point of view, it almost feels like it's going to be at their feet when they get there, but then it breezes right by them in the strike zone. So, it was fun watching him pitch because there were a couple of times I was expecting that ball to go, and it just sailed right into the strike zone.
And I mean, especially at the high school level, quite frankly, you just don't really see that many left-handed pitchers, do you?
You do at Richmond for some reason, but
no, that's true. Overall, though.
Yeah, overall.
So let's move on. Pinecrest was able to get one of those back. They defeated Richmond 7-0. Both teams had eight hits. Richmond and Pinecrest have now split their series for 4 consecutive seasons. Is that just a product of them being very even?
Yeah, I mean you got Hewitt at Pinecrest, Young at Richmond.
Yeah.
They're definitely 2 of the best coaches in the sport in the state. Now I'll put that against anybody. They're phenomenal coaches. Baseball coaches, and from what I know about them, they're also pretty good friends. So it's a good rivalry for the 2 of them. But yeah, I mean, these 2 teams have battled for the conference title year in and year out for the past several.
I know
And
we
they'll
were
always be-
battling them back in the early 2000s.
Oh yeah, I mean it's just been a great series between these two schools for, like you said, for decades. So I
Yeah.
mean I don't see that stopping anytime soon.
neither.
And I'm really not surprised about that statistic at all.
I'm not either. But then Richmond able to get back into the win column, defeating Jack Brett 6-1. Cam Caraway 3 for 3 with a home run and 2 RBIs. Jake Ransom continuing what he's doing, 2 for 4 with 3 RBIs. You want me to go ahead and read all these?
Sure, go ahead.
All right, so Tyler Bass, 2 for 3 with an RBI. Garrett Wigman, 2 for 4. Brett Young, 1 for 4. Dallas Cowick, 1 for 2. They had a season-high 11 hits, which is exactly what Ricky has been wanting them to do all season long. They also stranded 8 runners in the first 5 innings. You don't necessarily want to see that, but only 7 Ks in the game combined. So even though Jack Brett only scored 1, quite a bit of offense in this game.
Yeah, I mean, well, I would actually say the opposite, and quite a bit of defense overall. Both
Good
teams
point.
played very well defensively because, like I said, neither one of these pitchers were doing a great job getting strikeouts.
Right.
But the defensive players on both sides were doing a great job. I mean, both teams had several catches in foul territory near the fence. I mean, they were making
Nice.
great plays. Luke Presler had like one of them highlight reel plays where he just slid across the grass in left field and snagged one out of the sky. And I mean,
My old stomping ground. I was a left fielder for Richmond.
Nolan Allen played center field or against Jack Britt and had a great night as well out there in center field. So I mean, they were just playing really well. Hunter Paris even with Jack Britt had the bases loaded. Hunter Paris even caught one on a bounce and actually just instinctively scooped it up and threw it home to get the runner out coming home. So I mean, they were
got
making good decisions and got him.
Awesome.
So making great decisions, making great athletic plays. I mean, it was a good defensive performance by Richmond and a good defensive performance by Jack Britt because, like I said, in the Pinecrest loss last week, it was kind of the same thing. Richmond was getting the runners on. I mean, we mentioned a second ago they matched them in hits.
Yeah.
You know, Richmond was getting the runners on, but they just couldn't get them home. And it was pretty much the same thing most of the game against Jack Britt. There was one time they left the bases loaded. They left 2 on stranded a couple of times, but they kind of came alive in that 6th inning and pulled away.
Yeah, and going back to that interview I had with Ricky a few weeks ago, he talked about the pitching by committee thing. He also talked about being able to scratch out some hits to get some of those runs in. But one of the things was, not only stealing bases and putting pressure on their defense, but us playing stellar defense. And that's exactly what we're seeing, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. I mean, they've had a couple of really good executed double plays this season. I mean, just really good defensive play. I mentioned that I think in the previous show, and it's just been a delight to watch them play defensively. I'm like you though, and Ricky, I'd like to see more at the bat, and it was good that we got to see that a little bit. But if they play defensively the way they're playing, they'll do well.
Now, like the softball team, will all of their games be wrapped up before Easter as well?
They will. Now they do have a non-conference game Saturday against Northwest Guilford. And then they've got a Charlotte Christian game and a Terry Sanford game that are outside the conference.
Okay.
So they've got a few extra games on the schedule before that season-ending Easter tournament.
Sounds good. So we will, of course, keep you up to date with all things heading out there on the diamond, both Lady and regular Raiders. So let's move to the links and talk about some Richmond Raider golf. Now, on a team with no seniors, first of all, does that surprise you any?
Well, I mean, this is the second year of cover. Not really, because last year was very freshman heavy.
Okay.
And a matter of fact, the freshmen were actually kind of the stars of the team last year, so it was good to see most of them come back.
Yeah.
It's not really a surprise, but it is kind of you kind of want that leadership.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's just not there. But the young guys are still playing well and doing good.
And come back and talk to us in 3 or 4 years and see where we stand then.
Oh,
once
yeah.
They've all grown up. So, but with no seniors, let me shout out these players here because, as I mentioned, this is your one-stop shop for all things Raider sports. So the sophomores on the golf team include Jonathan Rich, Jacob Puckett, Carter Richardson, Jackson Mabe, and Will Thompson. And then your juniors include Evan McFadden and Jordan Lambert, Bryson Lampley, and Noah Altman. And then your freshmen are Ethan Brown and Braden Bailey. And not to be outdone, manager Drewville Patel, who is a sophomore managing this year, but also said in a story that Kyle or yourself, Fred, I'm not sure, that he wants to head out there on the links as well in the future.
Yeah, he's the only player on the team that really doesn't have any golfing experience at all. So that's why he kind of stepped into this little manager role
That's
until
smart,
he could learn.
though, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Because for people that aren't interested in how the golf teams work at Richmond, what they do is there's currently 12 players on this team. What they do is the week before a match, they play a couple of rounds at Foxfire, which is their host site.
Right.
That's where Richmond hosts their games. They'll play a couple of rounds there, and the top 6 best scores get to go to the next match.
Gotcha.
So Drewville is fortunate in his role because he gets to go to all of them.
Yeah.
So as the manager, he gets to go out there and play with the guys, and he gets to go out and fight. I mean, he gets to go play at Foxfire all he wants for free, and
and that's a great course, both of them there.
Yeah.
Real quick, talking about the course though. Do you think there'll ever be a day, besides Lock Haven, that Richmond has a home course here in the county?
I don't know. I mean, since the country club closed, and I know there was all this interest in reopening,
There's
but
a lot of red tape.
Yeah, it just doesn't ever seem to want to happen. But to be fair, in a lot of smaller communities like this, they're losing their golf courses.
Oh, are they?
The
so
interest.
we're not by ourselves on this.
No. There's a lot of them struggling. So.
All right. So let's talk about how they finished this week. So finished 5th in the season opener at Bayonet in Rayford. I love their name, Puppy Creek.
Yep.
But Jonathan Rich hit a career high 77. That's phenomenal, isn't it?
That is great, yeah.
Yeah. So Rich finished 9th out of 43 golfers, so he obviously had a great day. Carter Richardson had an 85. Unfortunately, he missed his career best by 1 stroke. Yep. Jacob Puckett shot a 102. That's a career low for him. Jackson Mabe, 104. Noah Altman, 104. And Evan McFadden, 110. So real quick, Bayonet, overall observations.
Well, I mean, I was at that one for a while and got to watch him play a little bit. I mean, obviously, Jonathan Rich hitting a 77. That's probably the first below 80 score I've seen from our boys' team in a while. So
That's scratch golf in there.
Yeah, that was kind of exciting to see. And once again, he was the leader last year as a freshman. He was the leader of the team. So, again, not surprising to see him hit low and lead the team, but it was pretty surprising to see him hit under 80, and if he can do that a few more times. Now, for a lot of people that don't know, they qualify for regionals by hitting scores less than 50 on a 9-hole score.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so they need to be in the 40s or lower.
So most of them are right around that, right?
Yeah, so and I think you have to do it maybe 5 times.
Okay.
So and again, that's a 9-hole score. So like for example, for Rich, this is already 2.
Yeah.
You have to do it 5 times, so he can actually count this as 2. So we've and Jonathan Rich, Jacob Puckett, and Carter Richardson all qualified for the regionals last year as freshmen.
Sweet.
So I expect to see them do that again this year. I don't, and I would love to see a 4th one go. So
well, let's talk about that real quick. So Jonathan Rich and the Raider golf team as a whole, what do you think their ceiling is this year, being so young?
In terms of conference play, probably 4th or 5th. I don't see them qualifying as a team.
Okay.
But I do see several of these qualifying as individuals to go into the postseason.
So there are some positives, and I think that the coach, his name's leaving me here, Keith
Parsons
would tell you that when it comes to this team, it's all about just getting better throughout the season, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we've talked about this before. You just got some sports that, are more about improving the individual because that improves the team rather than team play. Because, unfortunately, when these guys go out to the links, they don't see each other. They're all split up among holes all over the course. So they're not really playing together. They don't really have that support from their teammates. And, their coach, Keith, is having to ride around on the golf cart, visit one, go visit the other one. So it's a different kind of atmosphere in terms of a sporting event. It's where they really are out there kind of on their own. So.
They are. So let's move on talking about golf here. They finished 5th again at Gates 4 Country Club. Jonathan Rich once again led the team with an 87. Right behind him, Jacob Puckett rebounded from a career low in Week 1 to tie his career best in Week 2 with a 92. Now his front and back 9 scores were 48 and 44. That's really good. Yeah. Carter Richardson had a 99. Altman shot a 107. Jackson Mabe also shot a 107. And Will Thompson with a 114. So is this back-to-back weeks that Mabe and Altman have shot the exact same score?
Possibly.
How does that work?
I didn't get – no, they had 104s in the first week, 107s in the second.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, though. They both shot the same score.
Oh, they were identical to one another,
yeah. I'm not sure what the odds on that are, but maybe they should do a little gambling this weekend.
It is bracketology time, so we'll do some betting now.
But this second round of golf, what do you think about that one?
Well, the weather was kind of bad, first of all.
And that can affect
so
golf
he
big
mentioned
time.
that affected a lot of the players in this one. I have not seen the entire score lineup like we did the first week as far as where the
Right.
players from the other schools did. So I'm not sure where they kind of fall in those standings. But once again, Jonathan Rich, he had 87. I mean, it wasn't as good as his first week, but it does give him 2 below 9 or below 50 scores in 9. So that helps his cause. Jacob Puckett, he was one of the ones I was expecting to improve from last year. He kind of had a bad week 1, but then he followed it up here with 2 below 50 scores in 9 holes. So he's kind of punched that in his resume. And Carter Richardson once again. And it was good to see, and Coach Parsons even said this, it was good to see 3 players under 100.
Yeah.
So he kind of would like to keep working that out and maybe
Sure.
get a 4th player under 100. So I think Rich, Puckett, and Richardson will probably all be regional worthy again this year, and we'll probably see them play on into the postseason. And it would be fun to see if maybe one more can kind of
Now,
punch the tickets.
I do want to say, an 87, a 99, a 92, I would love to have those scores personally.
yeah.
If I can break a 100, then I feel like I had a successful day on the course. So, and even the guys that were over 100, with little experience, golf is not a forgiving sport.
No, and I think the biggest challenge is all these guys, in my opinion, are excellent on the fairway. It's when they get to the green. The putting has been a
A
challenge.
lot of guys deal with that.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's probably the hardest part of golf anyway, but at
Yeah.
this age, I'm sure it's even more difficult. But
Absolutely.
they're getting on the green and giving themselves an opportunity to get birdies and pars. And so, I mean, if they can continue to do that and improve that putting a little bit, you can see those scores drop.
All right. And then finally, let's move to the soccer field and talk about the Lady Raiders. So this is head coach Chris Larson. He coached the boys back in the fall. That was his first season with them. He's now into his first season with the Lady Raiders. So Cape Fear won 6-2. We beat them, right? 6-2.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So at Sweat we won 3-2. Lucero had a direct kick with no time on the clock. Then we ran up against the soccer juggernaut known as Pinecrest and lost 9-0. Then we Jack Britt 2-2 with a penalty kick by Morgan Hooks. Union Pines a 6-2 loss. 4-0 win over Hoke, and then a 5-2 win over Lumberton. So except for Pinecrest, we're playing pretty well, aren't we?
Oh yeah, I mean they're 5-2 overall, 4-1
Yeah.
in conference play. And to be honest with you, the way this is going, I strongly expect they'll finish second in this conference, which is great because it's going to give them, if they can, it'll give them a good playoff spot and probably a home game or 2
And I
in
mean,
the postseason. So-
everybody knows coming into conference play, it's Pinecrest, and then it's kind of everybody else, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean Pinecrest is going to be tough for anybody.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I'm not saying this team isn't capable of defeating them,
Sure,
but it's
sure.
it's going to be a very very high hill to climb. But like I said, they're playing well, and I expect them to be second place when the season ends. I really do.
That would be great. Now, before we take a look at the conference standings, you've actually got a list here of season scoring so far. Now, I'm assuming these are all goals that they've scored, right?
Correct.
All right, so let's start at the bottom here. Sophomore Jayla McDougal, junior Avi Lucero, senior Deanna Gomez, and senior Jayana Nicholson all have 1 goals apiece so far this season. Senior Chloe Wiggins and junior Valerie Standridge have 2 goals, respectively. Jesse Graham and Morgan Hooks, both seniors, and Carly Lambeth have 3 goals apiece. And then Caitlin Huff, a freshman, doing big things. 5 goals so far this season. So what's your take on all that?
Well, it's funny because when I look at this list and kind of look back at some of the stats of the game, it's interesting how a lot of these players that we just named off are having their big game moment. It's
Yeah.
like every game has a different player that just kind of stands out.
Which is what you want to see, right?
Oh yeah, it really
Spreading
is.
it
It really
around.
is. Because you're not really having. I mean, other than maybe Morgan Hooks, I don't know, but you're not really having any of these players consistently be the dominant factor in a game week in and week out. It's just like a different player just kind of jumps out on the stat sheet. Of course, I believe it was Morgan Hooks and Carly Lambeth who actually scored, or who actually kind of helped Richmond pull away from, Lumberton on Tuesday. So, and that was an interesting one. Richmond beat Lumberton 5-2, and that's kind of, as somebody that's been around for a while, that's just a strange one because Lumberton used to be kind of a soccer, juggernaut.
Yeah, I bet
It was
so.
It was tough to beat Lumberton. Lumberton and Pinecrest were kind of those 2 hurdles in the conference.
Sure.
So, but they're actually kind of down this year. Their record's not that great, so it's a good opportunity for Richmond to get in, and I believe their game's at 71st, who is, if I'm not mistaken, winless. So that should be one they can pull away and win. But
Yeah.
it's exciting to see, you know, them spread the wealth. I mean, I think you got 10 different girls already score goals this year, and we're not very far into the season.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. You're absolutely right. So double digits as far as number of ladies that are scoring. And as you mentioned, their next game is going to be at 71st. That's tonight. So, of course, you can check out the RO and the RichmondObserver.com to find out all of those scores. So, real quick, before we finish up here, let's take a look at the conference standings for soccer. Pinecrest, 8-0-1, 5-0 in the conference, pretty much where we thought they would be. Yeah. Who was that tied to here? Does that say on here?
Not in the that wasn't a conference game, so I'm not sure.
All right, so right behind them, though, is Richmond, 5-2 overall, 4-1 in the conference. And then Jack Britt, 4-1 overall, 3-1 in the conference. Is it those three and then everybody else, you think?
Probably. I mean, it was exciting to see Richmond get that win over Jack Britt. And, you know, when you were kind of going over the scores, you know, they won that one on a penalty kick.
Right.
So, I mean, it went through all the overtime periods and they went to penalty kicks. And, you know, Morgan Hooks was able to score that one to win it. And then, of course, you know, they mentioned the score with no time left against Purnell Sweat. So they're winning some clutch games, which is exciting because they're actually winning the ones that could go either way. And I think that's gonna tip the scales in their favor.
So with some of these other teams and players, I've asked you what you think their ceiling is for this season. So last question, as far as the Lady Raiders on the soccer field, what's their ceiling this year? Is it playoffs or bust?
I'm gonna say they're gonna finish second in the conference, and at least second round in the playoffs, if not more.
Right. So. Sounds good. And of course, the Raider wrap up will keep you up to date on all of that as the Lady Raiders hopefully march towards the playoffs, and not only soccer but softball as well. And I don't think that's going to be much of a problem this season. So.
No.
Unless there's anything else we're leaving out, and I don't think we are. Hopefully we'll have some nice weather this week. Nothing will get canceled. We won't have to jump around and redo the schedule. But, of course, we appreciate everybody tuning in to this wrap-up and all of the RO Sports shows that we put out for you each and every week. That's Dion Cranford. I'm Matt Harrelson. We'll see you right back here next week for another edition of the Ross Raider Wrap-Up.